Hello. Hi, everyone. Happy Friday and especially happy Juneteenth. Thank you so much for tuning in. Welcome to Adobe Live Education Edition. And we are so excited to get to share this time with you for a special edition. My name is Wezi Tindwa, and I serve as an education evangelist on our community team here at Adobe, joining you live from New York City. And I am going to be joined by my fantastic partner in creativity, Ann Cosba. So I'll turn it over to Ad to introduce yourself too. Hi,
Hey,
friend.
everybody. Hi, and hello to everybody out there tuning in the Adobe Live community. We're so glad you're here. Happy Juneteenth. My name is Ann Cosma. I'm one of the education evangelists at Adobe. We love supporting our community across Adobe. All of you creatives out there, folks who are lifelong learners, teachers, educators, students, folks, EDU adjacent, creatives out there in industry. This is going to be such a special live stream for us. Wesi, are you ready to jump in? Like, this is a beautiful day honoring a significant moment in history. And today we're talking about it through the lens of creativity and what Juneteenth means and how we can keep leaning in and learning on and broadening hearts and minds through a creative lens.
Absolutely. And it's incredibly powerful for the creativity aspect and also stories, not just stories we read, but the stories that we tell, the stories that are inherited, and the stories that we do create. And so every image, every poster, every symbol, every design choice tells a story. And when we are able to see that in moments like this, in historical, significant moments, it's really powerful for us to be able to lean into our creative sides, as you said, while also honoring the history that a holiday like Juneteenth represents.
Yeah, and honoring it in a way through this lens of creativity, as we mentioned, Wesi, through visual storytelling. So whether folks who are tuning in and y'all say hello in the chat, let us know where you're tuning in from. We know our awesome friend and teammate Nicole is tuning in from Northern Ireland right now. Hello to you all. But whether you're an educator, a student, a designer, or simply somebody who believes in the power of expression, this session is for you. And Wesi and I, we talk about this. Design is not just decoration. Design is communication, but sometimes design becomes advocacy. It becomes remembrance. It becomes celebration. And so that's what we're doing today on this Adobe Live session as we talk about how Adobe Express and Adobe Firefly can not only create meaningful visuals, but also honor history, celebrate culture, and amplify important narratives.
Absolutely, Anne. And by the end of today's session, our desired outcome is that you'll learn how to really dive into Adobe Express and Firefly, Adobe Firefly to create those visual stories that honor history, that amplify voices, that inspire meaningful conversations wherever you place yourself on that experience scale. Because as Anne said, design can be advocacy, design is storytelling, design can be all of these things. And in that way, we are designers. We design the expression and the knowledge and how we share that. So I really want us to be able to expand how we might see ourselves, but also expand the ways that we express the ideas that we know and that we've learned over years, the new ideas that we're learning, but also how we impart that to students. So if you're an educator, just giving you some ideas and tips for how to introduce a topic or a theme in a really meaningful way.
Yeah. So I'm just looking in the chat too, Wesi. I know our good friend Jaritza Vijalba is tuning in from New York. Hey, friend. Andy Knieven is here. Ryan and Brooklyn, our friends in the chat. We love seeing you. But as we get started in this, before we bring up our screens and jump into Adobe Firefly and Express, Wesi, like, let's ground ourselves in this moment in the historical context of why Juneteenth is a significant day. This is a beautiful day for learning. It's a beautiful day for honoring this massive moment in history. And of course, we're talking about June 19th, 1865, more than 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was issued. The enslaved people in Galveston, Texas finally learned that they were free. Imagine that. Freedom had been declared. Not everybody knew it. Not
Mhm.
everybody experienced it equally. And Juneteenth reminds us of this day and this significant moment when they finally learned this news.
Yeah, it reminds us that history, we study history, and it's also something that people lived. I remember being in high school, you all. I was in high school and I was just like, I don't know what I want to study when I go to college, but I know it's not history and I don't want to go into education.
Yeah.
I don't know why specifically I kept naming those two. It's almost like there was something in me that was in that. I ended up majoring in history and going into the School of Education, getting my master's in teaching. And I continued my professional studies following that all in education. And something that my dad said to me when I started college, and I was just like, I hadn't grasped this passion for history. And part of it was the way that I was learning history in school.
Yeah.
But then when I got to college and my eyes were open, just like, oh my gosh, this feels so fresh and incredible. There's like I had this insatiable appetite for it. And it was because of really powerful teachers. But my dad said something to me that really stuck with me. And he said, Wesley, history is just human interest stories. And
Wow.
the reason why they're human interest stories is because they are relevant to how we learn from our past today.
Mhm.
And so I always carried that with me, the human interest stories, that these are stories that we are inherently connected to by our shared humanity and how we choose to amplify that, what history has taught us. And so family stories, community stories, human
Yeah.
interest stories, stories of resilience, perseverance, of hope. And for many Black Americans and communities across the African diaspora, Juneteenth is both a celebration and a remembrance. And when we reflect on it, it's also how do we define freedom and how do we continue to fight for the freedoms that we have and preserve the freedoms that we have and fight for the freedoms that everybody's by their human right entitled to. So
Yeah.
long before social media, people were already using visual storytelling to help preserve culture and identity and in that celebration and remembrance.
Oh my gosh, what a beautiful way for your dad to kind of expand your thinking around that as historical, like not only like the human interest, the human experience, and then honoring and seeing it and giving space for those lived experiences. And I think that's fascinating too when we think about even as like adults or lifelong learners, like we're all on this journey and learning or revisiting history or unlearning and relearning things through our own lens. I used to work with an incredible woman named Journée Armand, who always used the phrase broadening hearts and minds. And that's this perspective
Okay.
I love taking as a lifelong learner to keep expanding the way I think about things because my lived experience is different than other people's lived experience and the beautiful way that we can see and honor and celebrate diversity in the world, but also how communities preserve stories. And that's what we're also going to talk about through a creative lens today and how art and design or even the possibility of music or things like creating quilts or content or a physical artifact, symbols, oral storytelling, photography. This is design. And through these concepts, and long before social media existed, people were already using these visual storytelling modes to preserve culture, to preserve identity. And we're kind of grounding it in the idea of your story matters. These stories matter.
So that is the big idea, and you have named it. Your story matters. Visual storytelling isn't new. And historically, the images are used to communicate when the words aren't enough or when the words are being suppressed. So, voices, sometimes when they're not being heard, the visuals come to the rescue with that. When art has often been a form of resistance, as we've seen over time, also a form of preservation and a form of hope. And that expression is just so beautiful. And we get to have access to amazing tools to be able
Yeah.
to tap into that artistry.
Yeah. And those tools and for students especially. So, I've said on this before on live streams before, former first grade teacher here. I know you and I also have moved from not only classroom educators into coaches and lead learners in our communities, and now having the opportunity to talk about this with fellow educated, educators and creatives and students, especially like for visual storytelling opportunities to express identity or agency or your own sense of belonging, to expand empathy or self-expression. And you just mentioned it, like the way that the arts and design and creativity empowers people to some side, like convey or express or say something that maybe they can't or don't feel safe to out loud.
Yep,
Yeah,
exactly.
wow. That's powerful.
It is. All right. So we're going to create with purpose.
Yep.
That's what this is about. So your story matters. Let's create with a purpose around that story. And here are some guiding questions that we're asking. What story am I telling? Whose voice is represented? What emotions do I want people to feel? And what message do I want people to remember? And I want to have some call outs in the chat. Thank you all for joining in the discussion. I see solidarity, Bachelor of Arts, Africana Studies with a minor in education. Yes, thank you for sharing. And we've also got Ryan who shared visual storytelling is more accessible for a larger part of the population. And absolutely, having just more access points to your story is
Yep.
so, so powerful. Hi, Claudia. Claudia is joining us along with our other teammate, Nicole. We know we gave you a shout out, but thank you, everybody. Oh, and we also have Andy. Hey, Andy. So thanks, everybody, for joining us. Now let's get into it. Let's get
Yeah.
into that creation. How about it, Anne?
Okay, so we have on the screen already, we're going to start with Firefly, and we're jumping into Adobe Firefly and specifically Firefly boards, the AI assistant, and talking about workflows as we get started, Wezzy, because sometimes it might kind of look like this: context, generate an image, and design, right? But as educators, as students, as learners, what we're really doing is researching, framing our schema and our context around something, sourcing inspiration, developing our stories, kind of coming up with our like visual language and visual descriptions, which then inspire design. And I have jumped like dove into the deep end of Firefly boards because this is this perfect middle stage to think of boards as like my visual planning space. And I know you've talked about it as like the guide for like how you can set yourself up for success, or even how educators could set students up for success for direct instruction or preparing visual content or jumping into a bigger project, whether it's research, design, etc. So like before designers create, we collect. Before storytellers tell stories, we get inspiration, right? Before
Absolutely.
students design, they need a place to explore. And this place is Firefly boards, right?
Yes, and you can think of it that way. Um, Educators, teachers, I know you have been here where you have an idea, you've got your scope and sequence, and you're searching or spending hours for visuals, the right
Yeah.
visuals, the visuals that are royalty free. And you've got all of this brainstorming that's happening out up here, but you just need, if you could just have a place to streamline and to put it all down and to support you, this is where the boards can really come in handy for you. And that's how I have been using them as well. It has this like the dot kind of dot notebook style, which I love. I have my own dot notebooks for when I'm designing and thinking about different things. And so just being able to piece out those elements, but also the efficiency in
Yeah.
generating images for your themes, for your lessons, and then you can use the AI assistant there to help you guide with the content questions that you can just pull and then present to students for direct instruction or for vocabulary lessons.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a minute. What I'm just showing, and I did a slow scroll on Firefly. So folks know, of course, you can generate an image, you can generate video content. There's all kinds of new, just a shortcut. Click on that tile and it will allow you to use these tools. There's also these recommendations. I want to just shout out real fast, Wezzy. Generating soundtracks, editing images, generating images, fill, cartoonize, extending, like these are all those shortcuts into creative. But you just mentioned this AI assistant. So I want to click on that. And we're going to actually talk about this first because this is only something that like I've just recently started using. And to me, we talk about this with Express also, the shortcuts to launch right into creation instead of starting from like a blank space or the first few clicks that might generate some kind of like that blank page anxiety, right? I noticed immediately this build a mood board. But batch editing or creating from these launching points, this is how I started with this mood board, and we'll get there. But you have done some pre-work related to generating some images,
Yep.
creating some content. And of course, it's all centered around how you would frame learning related to Juneteenth. So I want to go into that and start talking about some of the pictures you've generated, which again, right inside of Firefly is using the Gen AI to generate these images. So tell us a little bit about what you created and let's have a conversation about this.
Yeah, it was pretty simple. I started the flow in AI Assistant, just kind of testing it out with different things. And then I said to the AI Assistant, I said, I would like to explore the theme of Juneteenth. That was my statement. And it responded, let's get started. I'll use warm fine art style, landscape, 4:3 ratio, generate 6 images covering different facets of the Juneteenth story, freedom,
Okay.
community, joy, heritage, reflection, and celebration. So then it generated these images for me. And it not only generated those images, but it explained each image.
Mhm.
So image one, the moment of freedom, a family embracing the Gal at the Galveston shore with sunrise, tears, joy. Two, community celebration, a packed street festival with Juneteenth flags, etc., etc. So as if you're a teacher and you are a historian, you can go through and pull from that and say, okay, I've got visuals for these strong stories. Like, let me verify exactly which facts I want to keep or which I need to edit. And then I pulled those generated images into my Firefly board and I decided, okay, what is the story that I would want to tell? I would want to tell a timeline, a chronological story with images represented. So those first 5 images on the upper left side that you see there,
Mhm.
that's what the AI assistant came up with. And so I used that and my own background and learning to build out my timeline images.
Okay.
So I thought, okay, I want an image of the Emancipation Proclamation with Abraham Lincoln, 1863, because that's significant to the Juneteenth story. That was 2 years prior to the Declaration of Freedom for enslaved peoples who didn't get that message or who heard of the message, but they couldn't enforce their own freedom. Union troops had to come in and enforce it because they were part of a rebel state in Texas, and that wasn't being honored. And so you have the image there of Abraham Lincoln with the Emancipation Proclamation. And then one of the images there, the celebratory, I'll speak to that. The celebration image, the second row on the far left, the first picture on the second row on the far left, just if you go up one, yep, that one. So I wanted this to be more so, okay, so the 1865 happened. The General Granger came in to Galveston, made the Declaration of Freedom. And from the next year forward, that date on June 19th was celebrated by
Yeah.
40 enslaved people. And so I said, let's take this image and let's recreate it as if it were a sketch from the 1890s. And so I thought, okay, celebrations were happening around feasting, but there was also arts and
Yeah.
music and dance. So let's also incorporate that. So then I generated a new image to incorporate that. The image just beneath that of General Granger's Order Number 3 in Galveston on June 19th, 1865. If you see that, that was generated in Firefly. And to me, it looked too much like a primary image. And so I said, you know what? I think this would be more authentic to the fact that this is a generated image
Yeah.
if we used it in a sketch style, in a drawing style, as if it were part of a news article of the
So,
time.
Wesy, let's talk about that for a moment
Yeah.
because like this looks like a historical photograph, but we
Yeah.
know it was AI
Yeah.
generated and you just mentioned how folks might get their, the best practice and what we as educators want to ensure our students know is also like what is AI generated, what's real. This is not a primary source. This has no
Correct.
this is AI generated. But you intentionally shifted from what is like a realistic looking photograph to the illustration of that. And I know you talked about the arts and the musical piece, but that's a significant shift also. And I'm thinking of like, since I worked with primary students, that clearly goes from realistic photography to something that we know isn't real photography. It's an illustration, it's a concept, it's a visualization of that. But that's a powerful shift to also help somebody with the visual supports while clearly drawing a line and knowing, yes, this is still a dynamically AI generated visual with Firefly, but it's different than this one because this moment isn't real. It's imagined, it's conceptualized, right? This is a significant shift. And I know you played around a few times with some of the different images in it, because it started out without some of the arts or some of the artistic and musical kind of like interpretation in the back of the picture.
It did. And I actually, I don't know, I think it kind of got lost on my board there, but I'll pull it out. But I did take the black and white Granger image and have
Yeah.
it regenerate as a sketch. I might have that on a different board there.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
didn't see that one.
yeah, I think it kind of got lost in the
Okay.
shuffle, but I did take that exact one and make a sketch form of it, just like the dinner table image. And then to your point, Anne, Justin, I actually found myself in a place of like really helpful an analysis as I
Mhm.
was looking through these images and the vocab that was generated through the AI assistant because I got to look at the images, analyze the images, determine is this an authentic depiction
Yeah.
of this moment or this event, and how can I improve it, and how can I improve it for storytelling and for accuracy and
Yeah.
for authenticity. And so style matters with that, right? I was just like, I don't want it to look like a real photo because it's not a real photo in this instance. And we're talking about factual history. And so in depicting nonfiction, I don't want to blur those lines.
Yeah.
The second part of it too is I want images to represent these moments that define the Juneteenth story and the Juneteenth history. And so if I'm talking about something from the 1860s through the 1900s, it should look pretty much like it was for that time. So I said, make sure that the objects are mirroring objects from 1890 at the dinner
Yeah.
table, things like
Yeah.
that I added in the text. And then there was an initial image of Abraham Lincoln that came out for the Emancipation Proclamation, if you go up a little bit. And it was trying to show before and after this Emancipation Proclamation. So you see an enslaved man in the back, still in chains, and then you see a family on the right. And there
Mhm.
was something about it that rubbed me the wrong way. So I stayed on this picture for a minute and I said, you know what? While it was a proclamation of emancipation, we know historically that big dramatic look of celebration was not a genuine depiction of all of the multitude of emotions
Yeah.
an enslaved person can feel after being in bondage for years, that all their generation's memory in years, that isn't like an instant reaction. It's going to be
Yeah.
lots of mixed feelings, and there's going to be so I didn't want I felt like that wasn't I felt like that was a little bit of romanticizing happening
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
that image. So then I regenerated it to just say just Abraham Lincoln with the Emancipation Proclamation. The first one didn't have any text. The second one mirrored the text that's on the Emancipation Proclamation.
Yeah.
So that's the one that I chose. But that's what I meant by like a healthy place of analysis,
Yeah.
looking at these images, as I was thinking, okay, key points. I know that I want to make a resource guide or an infographic with
Mm.
key points of this journey. So I want to be able to work with AI as an assistant
Yeah.
in generating the images that will help me best tell that story. And then lastly, that modern day image of a Juneteenth celebration, which shout out to the Black Employee Network at Adobe. We had a fantastic Juneteenth celebration in New York City Union Square office last week. And so we had lots of different orgs come and different companies come. It was very diverse and it was really wonderful celebratory event. The first picture that was generated here as a Juneteenth celebration, I noticed that flag looked off to me because I was like, I haven't seen this flag. This flag, I don't think that's the flag. So I went back and I checked, and indeed the flag is actually two stripes, it's blue and red, white, and blue. So
Mhm.
I went back to AI and I had it pick that image and I said, can you change the flag to accurately depict the flag that represents Juneteenth?
Yeah.
So I was able to make that edit, and it looks very subtle. It's hard to tell from afar, but again, I felt like I was in a really good place of analysis to be
Yeah.
able to make those decisions and edits to the AI generated images.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's so, I appreciate you taking the time to like explore and explain like your thought process in like the intentional design, the intentional shifts that you made. Again, just like this one depicts like what could be a realistic photograph, but the like, like the emphasis that's depicted in parts of even the illustration pieces and coming back to a more like, what's a good way to represent these moments, but also convey the significant experience these folks at the time must have felt finally learning of their freedom and liberation, right? Like,
Absolutely.
oh my gosh. Well, Wesi, like, I love this. And folks, remember these images because Wesi has taken all of her like framing and design in boards and then used it to create something in Adobe Express that we'll jump into in a few minutes. But Wesley, I'm going to share a little bit about how I used mood boards and how I set up like an entire project in Adobe Firefly using boards to kind of show an example of how you could set your students up for a project. So let me jump into the mood board because this was something I used that AI assistant for. Remember a moment ago when I was saying the mood board? And my prompt was community celebrations honoring Juneteenth. And this is what was automatically generated for me. And I went through a little bit of a framing. I asked about for it to be multiple pictures. I wanted it to be realistic photographic style. And this is what was generated. And I love just the vibrance that comes through in here. So what we're going to do now is kind of look at these and analyze what was generated with Firefly. And then we're going to talk about the themes that like we could guide learning into and the themes that are generated in these pictures. So from the dancing and celebration and family moments or discussions, big community like celebrations, the joy of community, the togetherness, the reflection, the memoration, like the memories that might have been shared, um, honoring cultures and honoring so much. But like this picture with the single candle is so powerful and the remembrance. and the
Mhm.
honor of, you know, the deep history of what enslaved people have gone through and the history of time, as that's very real in the world's history, in this country's history, and that contrasting with the joy and celebration and honor of this significant day and the announcement of the freedom and the equal rights that are due for humans, and that people finally found out that their rights needed to be enforced, needed to be honored, needed to be part of their daily experience as well. So, like, this is automatically generated, but what a brilliant way to kind of leverage that AI assistant, even as a front loading experience or a conversation loading or building schema and reference to a concept. Our theme today, of course, is honoring Juneteenth, but every curricular focus area in every classroom and every grade level could
Yeah.
definitely leverage that. And it literally is, popping into your AI assistant and literally going through, make all of my photos like, here's the mood board. So this is what the workflow looks like. And Wesy, I loved that this was so simple because it was like, okay, well, ask anything. What's the subject? Honoring Juneteenth,
Mhm.
right? And then I just literally typed a simple prompt like that, and it guided me into some deeper thinking. Let's set up creative choices for you. And as it thinks through, it just guided me and prompted me like into the next step. So I love this. And it, like, as you see, it's beginning to like script through what model do I want to use? How do I go through? So, like, let's say I'm doing, Firefly. It's giving me these four quick prompts. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so folks can see it easier. Joyful documentary, Afrofuturist, muted historical, graphic and symbolic or other. So, like, I'm going to come into the joyful documentary, because in the midst of honoring this moment, there's joy in the present, and there's joy in the celebration of what this moment meant and how it changed history. So, like, yep, mixed aspect ratios. This was so simple. It's just going. And I'm always choosing all the pictures. So I went for 8 pictures instead of 6. And so I completed my questions, and then it begins to generate for me. So that was super simple, a quick, easy way to get a mood board leveraging this AI assistant. And we'll give it a moment to see what generates. But I want to show one more board, and then let's jump over to Express and talk about the pictures that you generated, and how you turned it into this visually rich timeline of Juneteenth and these historical moments. So check out this mood board. I'm going to take a peek at the chat too. So
Well, and while you're doing that, I would love to ask folks in
yeah.
the chat, you had such a wonderful collage there. If you I don't know if you can without interrupting right now. If you go back to your mood board where you
Oh,
had
yeah,
the
yep, yep.
question, um, because I think that this is a really inspirational way to use your board. So on that first board, you had, the collage of images generated, and then you talked about like, oh, this is such a powerful way to use the visuals, and then you have the
Yeah.
what do you notice? So I'm curious, folks in the chat, what themes do you notice? Like, let's say you were in class, and your teacher had this board up. We're going to put our student hats on. And what themes do you notice? So when you take a look, what's coming out for you? And this is just a simple way to get students connected to the subject area and just talking about the power of the visuals.
Yeah.
And that it takes very minimal prep to be able to do this, to spark ideas and to spark conversation for
Yeah.
students. So these are some of the themes that are coming out. It's celebration. Ryan says the red, black, and green immediately stood out. My eye immediately went to the man on the top right and the woman on the top left.
Yeah.
Absolutely, like calling out the colors, those are vivid, strong colors that are coming out in community. remembrance. So then it's actually a really great kickstart for dialogue and for vocabulary for your students as well. So if you're just using it simple to start that thinking, that is a really great use of it. The consistent colors, people gathering,
Yeah.
closeness. Yeah, and
I
you might have
love Ryan dropped that in the chat. Thank you, Ryan. Like the closeness, not only in physical proximity, but you have to imagine it's the shared, like the memories, the learning, the experience, but it's the closeness of mind and it's the closeness of heart, not only through the awareness and understanding, but the like familial aspect that it has grown from history passing and shared experiences for every person who partakes and celebrates or recognizes or learns or, participates in their own way. So I love that word. Like that means that's so nuanced. It means so much.
yes. Oh, and I love this from
Oh,
Ryan. The
yeah,
beautiful community enjoy reads, but the candle and the grandfather reads as it also being something
yeah,
that is also a memorial. Yes, it's that remembrance, the
yeah.
multi-generational participation, all of that. So this is just an example of how your board can serve as your visual conversation starter around a theme.
Yeah.
And teaching vocabulary with the visuals as well. Minimal prep, but the board is there
Yeah.
to help serve that purpose.
So, Wesley, I love it because you just called out like y'all add text. Like these tools exist. There's annotation tools, adding content. But what's really cool is when you click on it, like I clicked, you can click vary. Like, so I clicked on one of these celebrations and clicked vary, and it'll continue to generate and vary different options and give you more. Of course, you can leverage the image, the generating video, and of course, like the presets you might have set up. I don't have anything preset set up, but Wazzy, I want to talk with you about one more board. Here was the mood board that we just generated through that little activity with Firefly, a joyful documentary, and the mixed aspect ratio. But here are some of the images that were generated. And look at how very different they are from the previous mood board and beautiful images that still evoke a completely new sense of themes that are drawn out. Like the wonder in learning of this young girl's face.
Love that.
This looks like the neighborhood next door. I know my community puts on a big Juneteenth celebration at our local Tri-City Park, and like this is a beautiful way to kind of revisualize or re-enter into the schema people are building around it. And as we think about projects it leads to, here's an example I set up of a board about some student, let's say a junior high, high school, elementary kid, anybody, a lifelong learner. It could be a 40-something-year-old learner, right? Creating something or creating a poster to present to their community. And I kind of, in some of my like preparation for this quote came up and it kind of struck me as this really beautiful through line. If somebody saw your work and could remember only one thing, what would you want them to remember? And to me, that's the power of visual imagery. But we know this is so scaled and nuanced in terms of people's learning journeys. And I need to quote Yuritsa in the chat, the reminder of Pan-Africanism. What a beautiful like way to frame the breadth of learning that can be represented and the breadth of the human experience and the Pan-Africanism throughout cultures, individual communities, families, and the way we take our learning from this. Thank you, Yuritsa, for dropping that in the chat. But Wesi, looking at this board, all I did was leverage some of the like varying, this is what it looks like to vary an image. It's automatically generated from you. I'm setting up my thinking process for this project. So part one, building background knowledge. I might include some like, hey, here's the schema. Hey, here's what I want to ensure if I'm teaching a young student about this. What is and I don't want to oversimplify because that's not fair to the history of Juneteenth, but what are the big points as a teacher I might need to make? Or what are the guiding questions that I use in my classroom? Part two, becoming a visual historian. What, if folks are generating images with Firefly, what should those images represent? And how do we guide folks and with best practice or strategies to actually generate content meaningful to the work that they're doing? And I loved this one too, because it speaks to like the knowledge and the history of folks and the experience of people who've come before us, passing on learning or passing on memories or passing on their awareness to new generations coming up. And I love that this image was generated in a public library, right? Like, and it was just like that's what came up. But as I thought about the next step, like finding symbols before folks go in and actually create content. Symbols. You talked about the flag and editing the flag in one of your earliest generations. I saw Ryan talk about the arc that's actually represented in the Juneteenth flag and how that arc can actually symbolize the new horizon or the new opportunities or the new hope for the future that was born on that June 19 day so long ago. But what the symbols mean, or even helping students frame their awareness around it. So like this is kind of like my thought process of how to create the schema and the context, how to organize what I want to do. Like in my board, I could present it to my students, but then becomes the challenge of what if they're going to create something? What does that visual storytelling piece look like? What does the design piece look like? What does that hands-on creation piece look like? So whether it's thinking through a panel, and the reason I went through a panel is because I have a comic to share when we jump over to Adobe Express, but designing. And I love that last week our teammates Claudio and Meredith did a student storytelling piece and comic book piece leveraging Firefly for a bunch of content creation, and then they jumped into Express for the actual design pieces. So that's kind of something similar we've done today too. And as I share this last piece, let's get ready to jump over to Express, Wesi, because I know you found a brilliant template and you generated from your early content. Let's see, it was from this content in this board, you took it into Express and built out a timeline.
I
And
did.
we think about how kids can then go in, create something. And Wesi, then the extension becomes how could they add their voice to it? How could they continue to personalize it in whatever way? So let's jump into Express. Are you ready for this?
I am ready for this.
All right. So, folks, inside Adobe Express, you have the opportunity to teach, to create, and to learn. And I love that there are so many shortcuts to just jumping right in. But Wesi, you leveraged this little button right over here called templates. Tell us
Mhm.
about your thinking, your workflow, and I'm going to go ahead and click buttons.
Yep. So from the home page, very simply, you can click on the templates button. So I know some of you like to dive right on in and use that search bar at the very top middle of the page and just type in your template topic in there. That's another way that you can do it. And so for exploration, it's always great, especially when you have students who are newer in Adobe Express or you yourself are newer to Adobe Express, is as Anne Cosma says, click all the buttons, go in there, search, see
Yeah.
what's available to you. And so I did that. And as Anne is showing here, there's a lot of content for Juneteenth. You just type in Juneteenth, and there are a lot of templates that you can pull from. And there's lots of different activities and events around Juneteenth as well. As I mentioned, we had a celebration at our Union Square office in New York City. And that was celebrated with music from So Far Sounds. They had live performances, they had MCs, they had networking, just connecting with different people representing different cultures and communities. And that was a huge celebration. And they had a visual flyer that went out.
Yeah.
Was really nicely designed. So you can design for events and you can design for announcements. So what I did is I typed in, I was thinking more instructionally and informative
Okay.
info. So I typed timeline And I chose a timeline template that I felt I could would work because I wanted to capture key moments and events. And this is the template that I chose. And if you go to page one, this is what the original template looks like. It's just a basic timeline of events template. And I didn't want to have to, fuss too much with the template. I was doing a first draft. Oftentimes my templates, by the time I'm done with them, look nothing like the original. But I like to be inspired by an
Yeah.
initial. So
Can I
that's
jump in on that statement alone, being inspired by them? Like, I think that's why I love templates so much is I want a visual inspiration. I want something, I'm like, I like that visually, and then I take it and I go from there. And take it and go from there is exactly what you did, because tell us about page two and what you did.
So page two, I started with the content, the key information in the timeline. So this timeline is set up as before the event, and after the event. That's the format of this
Sure.
template. So I wanted to capture just what I wanted to do. Let me try a basic timeline to start, like an almost like an introductory
Yeah.
overview. So I did 1863, issuing of the Emancipation Proclamation. And then the event 1865 in Galveston, Texas, with General Gordon Granger coming and announcing order number three.
And Wesy, this is where we see the difference between that original image that looked photorealistic to now this as, a comic illustration. That difference has a significant visual impact.
It does. It really
Yeah.
does. And I wanted there to be consistency in the images. So the second image was the onset of Juneteenth becoming a celebration, June 19th, the blending of the wording, and then the precedent of an annual tradition. And
Mhm.
the AI image that was generated in Firefly was actually a completely different tone. So what I did is I clicked on this image. I hit the effects button on the left, and I used one of the tones, and I played around with the Photoshop filters, but so
Yep.
that it would match a little bit more the hue
Yeah.
of the other sketches.
Yeah.
So you can always go in there and just make those little tweaks and adjustments for continuity, which is what I did.
I love that.
And so I wanted to tell the story factually on one side and have the images on the right side for the event, and then that order is obviously reversed in the format of the timeline. And then I did after, and I picked 1980 and 2021 as key years in the Juneteenth history, because Texas adopted Juneteenth as a state holiday in 1980. And it became a federal holiday in 2021. Now, we know that many states have their own emancipation days. And it's significant for Texas to be there, obviously, because of order number two being announced in Galveston, where the over 250 formerly enslaved peoples were granted or enslaved people at the time were granted their freedom way after the Emancipation Proclamation. So that's why I picked those 2 years. And then I went back, and those circles, I decided to really think about symbols.
Yeah.
So I used iconography to have like just a symbol to represent that particular event. So I used the gavel. My temptation for any kind of announcement or proclamation is to have a megaphone. And I was like, megaphone doesn't seem right for
For this moment.
1863.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I used the gavel there as a legal document, and then used for the second icon, the chains, the depiction of chains being broken. And then the last one was a celebratory with the stars. And you see
Yeah.
those stars coming up in a lot of themes around Juneteenth, including that flag. So
So
those,
you think about those three icons also, the visual impact that they bring into each of those sections. And I love, Wesy, you've heard me do this multiple times. I break this down. It's literally a few text boxes, the images, the icons, and like the visual display has that impact. But when you're looking at this, it's some text boxes and some images intentionally, purposefully created that land in
Yeah.
such a significant learning opportunity.
And if you're a beginner or if you want a quick resource, pick
Mhm.
a template that you know you're not going to have to manipulate too much of those objects around,
Yeah,
which is what I did, right? It was literally plug and play. Left-hand side is where you import new media and new elements.
yeah.
I uploaded those images. I went to the add content button and added them from the left side and was able to just plug them in to an existing template and have it look very polished and professional at the
Yeah.
end. And I love that you're walking us through this. And we
Yeah.
also get to your comic as
Oh,
in
yeah. Well, I'm just showing this because I love, you hear me say it, you know this. Push all the buttons and play to learn. And folks who are either new to Express or new to other Adobe tools, the buttons were intentionally designed for you to click on. So, like, don't be afraid to push all the buttons. But anytime I'm talking about Express, literally, this is a text box, the text editor pops up. This is the background. So you have, editing page, the background colors, etc. This is that image. You can replace the image. You can leverage those incredible Adobe stock content, videos, design assets, etc., or pull from your stuff. So that's why I'm clicking all the buttons, Wezzy. But this is a really phenomenal visual. Thank you for creating it. And folks, from those templates to the finished product, like Wezzy just shared, how powerful it is when you personalize and customize a template. And Wezzy, every template inside Express, people can customize the directions too. So, like, if a teacher wanted to write step-by-step instructions, that just sets everybody up for success.
Absolutely.
Okay, so are you ready for my comic strip?
See the comic strip.
Okay, I'm going to actually reset for a moment and show folks how you can find the comics because this is one of the newer features inside of Express. So when you're in the create section, you see this create a comic strip feature. And Wezzy, there have been epic feature updates inside this little feature where folks now, of course, can enter their topic and some details to prompt the comic. And now there are multiple characters as an option, the ability to upload yourself, whether it's in a file or launch that front facing camera. And I have to show this, like, you can be inside your comic now. So,
Good.
like, I love this. I love it so much. And if I wanted to use it, I would become the character in it, different themes and friends. I have already done this, but what's really cool about this is I just did teaching seventh graders about Juneteenth, right? And it's an open-ended comic. You can set up any of these, and you literally would generate your comic. I'm going to go ahead and click that, and it gives it a moment because you see some like previews. It begins to think through, and I love that while it's working on my comic and you see it scrolling, I literally can scroll through and get inspiration of how these comics can be used and leveraged for every grade level, every curricular focus area, any kind of content you want. You can make your own comic, comic to share a big idea. Phases of the Moon, right? So we're looking about Shakespeare, ancient water highways. They're brilliant examples, and I love clicking through these when my comic is being generated. So I always just kind of like scroll, like the evolution of graffiti, super interesting. Arts and crafts of horror films, phenomenally interesting, right? Like, I love all this. So mine's at 83, 84, 85%. We're gonna see what's generated, and then I'll show you the one that I actually have generated.
Love
Also,
it.
I just saw the chat. Shout out to Journée Armand, who's now in the chat.
Oh, good.
Cathalis, I see you too. Now check this out. Here I am teaching, and I love this already because it's set up. It knows I'm a teacher. Today I'm teaching about what it means. Who can tell me that's right? It marks the news of freedom finally reaching. It's inspired by the picture of me that I added in. I love that it has my little Adobe shirt
Good
and some other
logo.
pictures too. But what's cool is you actually can edit an individual scene and you can edit what the character says. You can come in, personalize, customize it. student voice, educator voice, every voice, you get to personalize it. You also can actually edit the scene description and personalize it even more. All that is opportunity, right? So then you generate it, and I'm going to go ahead and let that generate, but I'm going to share with you the Learning About Juneteenth comic that I previously created. I use this little character, Eliza, all the time. I think she reminds me of my niece because my niece is kind of fun and funky and loves to, like, even at 8 years old, begs to have her hair dyed different colors. So it's typically pink. It hasn't been blue yet, but maybe someday. But I'm just going to zoom in on this because I created this about a young girl learning about Juneteenth and what it was and how the visual storytelling conveyed in a 5-panel comic goes from the concept of learning to understanding and internalizing and honoring the learning and the history. The challenge to remind us of what significant changes took place and how formerly enslaved people learned about their freedom, and how the call to action is to remember that freedom and that fairness and the opportunity mattering for everybody. The celebrations that now in our present time take place, but what that might have been as a call to action over change and time, and like just the celebration of learning. So this little visual, Wezzy, like what a great way to leverage the comic creator inside. And here we go. You can see this is being generated right now. The finished product is almost ready. And folks, let us know in the chat, like creative learning opportunities, Journey, you got it. Kay, the specialist, thank you for being here and saying that you're loving the learning with this today. Andy said the full expression range. Yeah, like you can see the expression right here. So like this is how mine created. And I love that it leveraged those pictures. I didn't have to edit the like background visuals. It gives it a title. I can actually edit and customize the title if I want. But I love, these are the expressions Andy is talking about. Listen, watch, I'm going to do my best thinking.
There you go. There you go. And this is clearly a multi-day unit that you are teaching here. You've got your different outfits for the
Yeah.
different days.
I know it's the unit, but y'all, I got to call out this add to gallery button because this is a brilliant way that you can add your galleries and your celebration spaces. So I could add that to my stuff, and I'm going to go ahead and add that to my gallery. That's a brand new button. The call out, it's automatically saved to your stuff. After you save it, it is not editable as a comic, and that's okay. But I literally have my comics that I'm just adding into my stuff. And Wezzy, so many beautiful opportunities to celebrate and honor and give space for this day, but also to remember an opportunity to dig into history or explore how symbolism of an event or a moment or something as significant as Juneteenth literally inspires us to continue learning, but to share that learning in creative ways and to create with purpose, right?
Absolutely. The storytelling matters,
Yeah.
your stories matter, and how we learn and express that learning matters. So,
Yeah.
in the spirit of MVPs, I'm in New York City. It's Nick's vibe. Go Knicks. Go ahead and drop in the chat. What was your MVP, your most valuable
Love
point
that. Yeah.
from our session, our time today? What was your most valuable point, your takeaway? And while you think about that and put it in the chat, I also want to recap just where we started and how we've ended. We
Yeah.
started in Firefly, and you gave us a really wonderful background in Firefly going into the AI assistant. Even if you just have a theme, that's all you've got is a theme. Maybe you're maxed out, you're tired, you're exhausted, or maybe you're just like, I haven't even started thinking about this yet. It's kind of down the line. So go into that AI assistant, let it know what themes you have, and let the inspiration come to you.
Yeah.
And then go into image generation analysis,
Yeah.
and you can start building from that imagery and that your board that you have, your mood board from place 1 through place 6, that should be a template.
Yeah.
Because what a great instructional trajectory of getting students from ideation to creation as well.
Mhm.
And asking meaningful questions. What is the history that you want to take back from that? And then we went into Adobe Express to express that learning and that thinking as well. You can leverage the templates. You can use this beautiful comic creator. But you have that content and you have that knowledge, and you're using those tools to make it come to life. So
Mhm.
in the chat, here's what I see. Love learning about the flag. Yeah, Ryan. Hey, there's so much new novelty that you can get from every different historical
Yeah.
experience. His human interest stories. Yes, Kapalas, go next. All right, New Jersey. And thanks, Nicole. Thank you all for joining us. Oh, Kevin, we see you. That's you, Kevin. But thank you all so much for being part of our journey today. We've got some call outs for you to join our Adobe communities. There's so many ways that you can continue to connect with us and network with our amazing community. Journey, I do want to call out what you have in the chat here. Student learning can be represented in so many creative ways with Adobe tools. It makes me so happy seeing the cultural assets already available within Adobe stock. Thank you for that. Absolutely. And what a way to help close us out as well.
Yeah.
Continue the learning. If you are an educator in the K-12 arena, you can join that Adobe Creative Educator Leader community at adobe.ly/join ACE Leader. That is open to whatever role that you have in education for our kindergarten through high school learners. You can also join if you are a student, if you are going into your freshman year or you are already in the higher education space. Regardless of where you are in the higher education space, you can join our higher education student communities, adobe.ly/group me. Same thing at Discord as well. If you are a higher education faculty, maybe you serve as a professor, an adjunct, in whatever capacity you serve at higher education level, you can join. We have a community for you that is waiting for you at adobe.ly/higher ed community. Sign up all lowercase. And then last but certainly not least, if you are excited and want to champion how you can create and develop and keep building creative leaders in your school buildings, 5th through 12th grade educators, we have a student ambassador program. We are launching at scale for back to school season. We already have over 5,000 students who've been signed up by ACE leaders. So if you are already an ACE leader, you can sign up again and opt into student ambassador to hosting a student ambassador site. If you are not an ACE leader, sign up to join the ACE leader community and opt in to join to host a student ambassador site. What does that entail? It's going to be a completely self-service model. We'll engage with you online. And we will have activities and ways for your students to deepen their digital creative tools, their community engagement, and to showcase student learning on a global level through the Student Ambassador Program. So we would love to see you all join and create that opportunity for students who you feel like could use a little push and growth for leadership and their digital creativity as well. So with that,
Love it. Love it. Wezzy, thank you.
anything
Yeah. Yeah,
else?
I was just going to say to the folks who are out there, and thank you for taking the time to learn with us and honor Juneteenth today. Y'all, when we learn to tell our stories with purpose, we also learn to listen to the stories of others. That's where empathy grows. That is where understanding begins. So we are so glad that you were here to learn with us. And there are so many great opportunities to keep learning across all of the Adobe education communities, all of the Adobe communities here at the Adobe Live Community YouTube page. Y'all, great learning exists. So join us for the next one and take time to take care of you. We're so glad you were here today. Thank you. Bye, y'all.
Bye.